head. Spokesperson Colonel Lam Paul Gabriel added that 2 major generals and 27 so-called enemy soldiers had been killed. He said Rebel General Simon Gatwech launched an attack on Mashar's men. Gatwech has not commented on the issue. Leaders from the Sudan People's Liberation Army in opposition say they deposed Mashar for failing to represent their interests in government. Mashar, on the other hand, has dismissed the declaration, saying it's a failed coup. Mashar has been in a power-sharing deal with President Salva Kiir since 2018. All right, our Patrick Oyet is live for us in Juba for more on this story. Patrick, what more can you tell us about the reported fighting in the SPLM opposition?
Yes, Peninah, it was only just a matter of time that these clashes was expected, because when the other group, the 3 generals with their troops, declared that they were no longer under Riek Machar and they were the legitimate leader of the opposition group that was led by Riek Machar called for emergency meeting and dismissed whatever those people said. Everybody was expecting that in a way clashes would take place. But now that very group also has released a statement saying that the clashes started. They did not attack Riek Machar's forces. It is Riek Machar's forces that attacked them. So there is accusation and counter-accusation. And of course, this is normally the time in the country where we see a lot of fighting, because, you know, it is now rainy season and then government troops cannot move. I say government troops because, look, the Riek Machar's forces that we are talking about here are the forces that are in cantonment site, in the camps, in the training camps, including those who have now actually split. They were all in the training camps. They were supposed to have been graduated more than a year ago. So if they were graduated, all these forces would have now been government forces. But because the peace deal's implementation is moving slowly, that's why they are still in the camp. So yeah, definitely this season of rainy season in these countries where we see a lot of violence, because you know that the government cars cannot move to all parts of the country because some parts are cut off because poor road network, because of also the flooding in the country. So many here are thinking and saying that this is unlikely to be the last clashes that we are going to see unless something drastic is taken to try to address the situation. Peninah.
And Patrick, how is this likely to impact the newfound stability in the South Sudanese government that relies on cooperation between Vice President Riek Machar and President Salva Kiir?
Yeah, these clashes are really going to affect the peace deal's implementation, because initially it is looking like this is a problem of Riek Machar, because somebody will tell you that let Riek Machar put his house in order because these are his forces. But then eventually, as I said before, these troops were in the camp under the current government where they were supposed to be trained, and then they were supposed to be graduated and redeployed now as government forces. So the clashes have begun between them alone now, the Riek Machar's forces and the forces of the 3 generals who left. But then eventually it will come to the government, and therefore it will drag the government in. And not only that, you know, we already have groups that were opposed to the current peace deal, and they were also having arms. They were fighting the government. A peace process is going on in Rome to bring them on board. And then now, this group also coming in. And the challenge will be that as a responsible government, the government would be required again to negotiate with them and bring them on board as a separate entity. And this is where the challenge is, because look, the current peace deal implementation has already created a very big government in South Sudan. For example, 550 members of parliament for a population of 12 million. You have about 45 members of the cabinet. So the government is already very big. And then with all these challenges that are taking place, it means this very government still has to negotiate with those groups and bring them on board. And the negotiations and continuous negotiations and bringing groups into the government is also an appetite. It's creating appetite for other groups to do the same, because now everybody thinks when I rebel or when I oppose this group and I carry up arms, then I will in a way be accommodated in the government. So it is likely to create more and more problems, and it just indicates how difficult it is to get peace for South Sudan, Peninah.
Patrick, we appreciate you putting it all into perspective for us. Thank you very much, Patrick Oyet, live in Juba. The Taliban have captured a key northern Afghan city. Kunduz is the third provincial capital to fall to the insurgents in the past 3 days. But it's the most significant Taliban gain. Earlier, Zaranj and Shaburhan were captured. The Taliban continues to make advances after the United States pulled out most of its troops. In another blow, the insurgents captured a prison in the north and released the prisoners, Cielo Dafid reports.
As the Taliban tighten their control in many rural provinces, Russia's air force is patrolling near Afghanistan's northern border. Fighter jets are conducting joint maneuvers with Uzbekistan, as both countries are worried about the worsening security situation. The city of Zaranj in southern Nimroz province fell on Friday, despite the Afghan government's claim that they're still resisting. These pictures, posted by Taliban fighters, appear to show them in control. Afghan officials are also targeted by the Taliban. The government's head of media and information was assassinated in the capital city, Kabul, on Friday. It's another aspect of how the country is being destabilized and weakened despite an ongoing peace process. Afghanistan's Western-backed president was at the funeral.
They fill coffins with young people. This isn't humanity. We stand for humanity, life and dignity of Afghanistan, and this is our wish.
Dozens of bureaucrats, civil servants, judges, journalists and social activists have been killed by Taliban fighters recently. They want to install a hardline Islamic leadership instead of the democratically elected, more liberal Muslim government. Local fighters are being called up to support the Afghan army and security forces to try and defend cities like here in Herat. At the United Nations, diplomats are reminded what's at stake.
You cannot terrorize the population on the one hand, unleash a massive attack on cities, and then go to Doha and talk about peace on the other hand.
Hundreds of travellers are stranded on the Pakistan-Afghan border after the Taliban grabbed control of the Spin Boldak crossing point near Kandahar last month. It's now closed for people and commercial traffic. In many other areas, thousands of families are displaced as more flee Taliban attacks. Makeshift camps are home to almost 350,000 Afghans, refugees in their own country as the fighting intensifies. Yoloap David, CGTN.
U.S. authorities are searching for 8 people as a huge wildfire rages in northern California. The Dixie Fire has become the third largest wildfire in the state's history. It has been burning for more than 20 days, forcing mass evacuations. It's now about 20% contained after having scorched 180,000 hectares. Cooler and calmer weather this weekend is giving firefighters a break. The cause remains under investigation. Wildfires are approaching Greece's capital, Athens. Thousands of people were forced to evacuate on Saturday, some escaping by boat. Reinforcements from other countries are arriving to help 1,400 firefighters push back the flames. Evangelos Sipsas reports.
Thousands of residents and tourists were evacuated in the early hours of Saturday as wildfires continued to burn across Greece for the 6th day, reaching the outskirts of the Greek capital. Authorities are urging people who live in the city to avoid unnecessary travel, to keep their windows shut, and to always wear masks. A fire threatening the Greek capital's most important national park killed one volunteer firefighter, while at least 20 people have so far been injured in blazes during the country's worst heat wave in 30 years. The fires that started near Mount Parnitha on Tuesday continued to burn and quickly spread to nearby urban areas, such as Krioneri, Drosopigi, and Afidnes, before reaching Aio Stefano, an industrial zone. Many houses and properties have been burned, and many animals have been killed.
We are very sad because it's not just about us. There are thousands of people that have lost their homes, their fortunes. Over there, it's dangerous for us. We've come here now, but who knows? We might have to leave again.
In apocalyptic scenes overnight, ferries evacuated more than 1,000 people from a seaside village and beaches on the island of Evia. After flames cut off all other means of escape, older adults had to be assisted as they boarded ferries to safety. The multiple fires have stretched Greece's firefighting forces to the limit. The government has received help from France, Ukraine, Cyprus, Croatia, Sweden, and Israel, with more expected to arrive on Saturday from Romania and Switzerland. Civil Protection Chief Nikos Kardalias said firefighters faced exceptional, dangerous, and unprecedented conditions.
As we said yesterday, we are facing the hardest day in terms of the intensity of the weather conditions over the last 10 days. From yesterday afternoon, a number of new fires were added to the many fronts across the country.
In the last 24 hours, the fire brigade has tackled close to 90 wildfires, including ancient Olympia, site of the original Olympic Games, Evia, Messenia, and here, north of the Greek capital. With wildfires seemingly everywhere, locals say it almost feels like their country is under attack. Evangelos Sipsas for CGTN, Athens, Greece.
This is Africa Live. Let's take a quick break. Coming up. Nigerian customs authorities reveal huge haul of rare pangolins killed, seized from smugglers.
Nigeria is my home. 160 million vibrant, ambitious individuals constantly seeking the perfect self-expression. It is these people who inspired me to be that person that is seen, to be a voice that is heard, and ultimately to be the anchor that I am. I have to tap in, tune in, and turn on the very best qualities within me to deliver the news. I'm Richard Nta, an anchor for CGTN.
The U.S. State Department has added 5 alleged senior members of jihadist groups in Africa to its terror blacklist. The new list includes Bonomade Machude Omar, the senior commander of ISIS Mozambique, Mohamed Rage, a spokesperson for terrorist group Al-Shabaab, and Abdikadir Mohamed Abdikadir, an operations planner for the same group. 2 senior leaders from the Mali-based Al-Qaeda branch Jamaat Nasr al-Islam wal Muslimin, namely Sidan Aghita and Salem Old Brimat, are also in the list. The State Department listing will freeze any assets the individuals may have in the United States and makes it a crime to assist them. So what does this mean for the terror suspects, and how does it impact the war on terror? We discuss these perspectives with Dr. Manu Lekunze, African security scholar at the University of Aberdeen, currently in Accra, Ghana, and here's his take.
As you know, adding the terrorist on a U.S. Department list has some effect in how these individuals and their groups are able to organize themselves around the world. However, you have to know that most of these groups and individuals are operating primarily within terrorist networks on African soil, even though they collaborate with international terrorist networks, but they primarily operate on African soil. So in reality, if you want to have serious effect on their activities, then you need to empower the states in which those networks operate in Africa to be able to constrain the activities of these individuals. So yes, there will be some impact on the activities of these terrorist groups. However, it's not going to seriously constrain their operations on the ground in Africa. But people are beginning to question what terrorism really means to this, to particular context in Africa. What is terrorism? Who is a terrorist? So it appears these concepts have been predominantly defined external to Africa and imposed on African realities. So what people are saying is that terrorism has to be defined in a particular context. Then you can develop strategies against terrorism based on the reality. So going around and saying and measuring or terrorism in terms of how many terrorists you have killed doesn't seem to address the problem. People are saying that there are economic issues, there are socio-cultural issues that are all blanketed into the term of terrorism, poverty, for example, and people are using terrorist-associated criminality or organized crime to survive, irrespective of whether they share an extremist ideology or not. So there is complexity within the words terrorism and counter-terrorism. And effective counter-terrorism to work in Africa, people involved need to begin to dismantle these terms and think about strategies that could actually address the issues on the ground, especially when we talk about youth unemployment and youth unemployability, because there's a lot of young people going into this terrorist-related activities just to survive.
Turkish and Libyan officials have met in Istanbul to discuss bilateral cooperation and regional issues. The two countries enjoy strong ties, especially since 2019, after signing a controversial maritime agreement. CGTN's Mikhail David has the details.
On Saturday, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan welcomed Libyan Prime Minister Abdülhamid Dbeibeh at the Vahdettin Mansion in Istanbul. The meeting took place behind closed doors and lasted an hour and a half. The one-on-one meeting was followed by talks between the two countries' delegations. Among other high-level Turkish officials present were Turkey's Treasury and Finance Minister Lütfi Elvan, Trade Minister Mehmet Muş, Turkish Central Bank Governor Sahap Kavcıoğlu. Turkey's ties with Libya have strengthened over the past few years, mostly due to a maritime boundary and security deal Ankara signed with the Government of National Accord in November 2019. Dbeibeh has since reassured Ankara of Libya's commitment to the deal, stating that it benefits Libyans. Turkey's Defense Minister Hulusi Akar also made statements related to Libya coinciding with the visit. Akar stressed that Turkish soldiers in Libya were there for military and education cooperation and that they were there at the request of the Libyan government. In 2020, Turkey critically helped push back an advance by Khalifa Haftar's Libyan National Army, which shifted the balance of power in favor of the GNA. Libya is now governed by a provisional government of national unity formed in March this year and led by Prime Minister Abdülhamid Dbeibeh. Though the controversial maritime agreement with Libya has drawn criticism from Greece and Egypt, it gives Ankara the right to explore gas in the exclusive zones determined by both parties and is expected to be the sticking glue for Turkey and Libya. I'm Mikhail David for CGTN in Antalya, Turkey.
The Nigeria Customs Service has seized a huge haul of rare pangolin scales and ivory that were to be smuggled out of the country. The seizure was made in the Nigerian commercial capital of Lagos last month, but the Customs Service has only just revealed it. CGTN's Deji Badmas has more on this story.
It's the third largest seizure of pangolin scales by the Nigeria Customs authorities in the past 3 years. Apart from the pangolin scales and claws weighing 7.1 tons, the seizure also includes 846 kilograms of ivory. Nigerian customs officials say they were all found after a raid on an apartment in Lagos, following intelligence provided by the Netherlands-based Wildlife Justice Commission.
This feat is a testimony of what sincere collaboration between nations can achieve for our world and individual nations in particular. While thanking our partners, especially the Wildlife Justice Commission, let me give the assurances of the service determination to treat any and every information with utmost confidentiality and swift appropriate actions to stem this tide of illegality.
The Customs Service says the haul is valued at an estimated $55 million, while conservation experts say it represents 15,000 dead pangolins and more than 80 dead elephants. It's not yet known what part of the country the items were sourced from, but authorities say 3 foreign nationals have been arrested in connection with the seizure.
The suspects arrested will soon have their date in court, as Nigerian Customs Service will leave no stone unturned to bring them to justice. We will extend same treatment to any person or organization remotely connected to this or any illegal wildlife export or import into Nigeria.
The suspects are reported to be part of a well-known transnational criminal network operating in West Africa who are linked to approximately 50% of all major pangolin scale seizures over the past 3 years. Pangolins are among the most trafficked animals in the world due to the demand for their scales and claws for use in traditional medicine in some parts of the world. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
More countries are starting to offer vaccines to children as cases continue to climb worldwide due to the Delta variant. Timothy Ulrich reports.
It's the next step people are pinning their hopes on to defeat the coronavirus.
I came to get vaccinated. First, to follow the order of the government. Second, we get this vaccination for free and we will stop the COVID-19 infection. And one day, in the future, COVID may disappear and then I can be free from wearing a face mask.
This student is one of many in Cambodia to get the jab after the government last week approved vaccines for anyone over 12. The country is not alone in this decision to inoculate minors. The distinction lies in how young. China in June approved the youngest age cohort in the world, anyone over the age of 3. That was after a Lancet study found Sinovac to be safe and effective for that age group. Of the 500 children involved in the test, 96% developed antibodies. The United Arab Emirates later also approved the use of Sinopharm for those as young as 3. Health officials in the UK last week recommended anyone over 16 can get vaccinated, but don't know how much lower they can go.
What we haven't yet decided definitively on are the otherwise healthy 12 to 15-year-olds who are at very much lower risk of some of these severe outcomes we're talking about.
Germany, the US, and Japan, on the other hand, have approved vaccines for anyone over the age of 12. Minors in Germany must first get a medical check and parental consent. Giving parents the power to decide on their children getting jabbed has caused a stir in France. Health Minister Olivier Véran made the announcement in June.
Indeed, the vaccination will be open to 12 to 18-year-olds. It will obviously be on a voluntary basis with the agreement of the parents. As you can imagine, it will be in no way compulsory, and it will contribute to this movement of collective immunity.
Controversy grew as, due to vaccine hesitancy, some parents couldn't agree to get their children vaccinated. Many minors went without the jab, and the government soon required only one parent to sign on. In the end, for France and other countries around the world, these decisions are made in hopes of curbing the spread of a variant more infectious and affecting younger populations. Timothy Ulrich, CGTN.
Meanwhile, Zambia has received a batch of Sinopharm vaccines from China in a bid to boost its vaccination efforts. The shipment arrived over the weekend and was received by officials from the country's Ministry of Health, the WHO country representative, as well as the Chinese ambassador to Zambia. Zambia says that China has been a long-term development partner, adding that the health sector has been one of the biggest beneficiaries. Zambia has also been working with the Chinese Center for Disease Control and Prevention, which has been providing technical support. However, the country says that it is still calling for more support for its vaccination program, as many people remain unvaccinated.
There is a great need to mobilize international cooperation to support Zambia to get rid of the disease and go back to normal. So China, as a friendly country, we are trying to make our share of effort to come together with Zambia to overcome this difficulty together.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca. Among the crowds in Cairo.
Who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile. Along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.